kind of wanted to get to talking about this earlier, but had some PC issues, at least in this room, and finally getting around to it. Pete Docter. Pete Docter is, I forget his actual title. It's like the chief creative officer, if I'm not mistaken, of Pixar. And, you know, he got to talking about Buzz, and I think this interview with a rap. This is Buzz Lightyear, which that Lightyear movie, that animated one, obviously all of them animated, but it was Dead on Arrival, but it featured this cast of like Chris Evans, which for whatever reason thinks he's a superstar, or they thought, let's say he's one, and you can just take a guy that is known for playing a Captain America and, you know, put him in this movie and people are going to go see it. That's not how it works. It's not how it's worked in a long time. The day of the movie star is gone, and I don't necessarily think that's an issue. Like, man, these people are filling a role and acting, and they can have talent, and you can acknowledge that talent. But at the end of the day, especially if you're acting on something that already has some source material, well, you know, you're supposed to be embodying that, and if you are good at that, that's fine. But the days of, like, I think we have like Tom Cruise, and there's a few others that you can point to where people will go see their movies just because of that star, but it's not like that really anymore. And so I guess they played. Let's say, I don't know who was reading the markets back then, and yeah, I think it lost money, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of how much they spent on that, over $200 million, if I'm not mistaken, or something around that on that film. It didn't have it was a different little synopsis, or a different kind of, it's not Buzz Lightyear as you know him, like as a toy. It's more of the person that inspired the toy, and they're trying to do this whole sci-fi thing. It was just Dead on Arrival. But they don't understand in terms of how the marketing plays into that. And Pete Docter kind of talked about this when he was asked a question from the rap, and the question was on, like, hey, basically what happened? You know what I mean? And this is what he says. We've done a lot of soul searching about that because we love the movie. We love the characters and the premise. Of course you do. I think that probably we've ended on in terms. I think probably what we've ended up on in terms of what went wrong is that we asked too much of the audience. He says when they hear Buzz, they're like, great. Where's Mr. Potato Head, Woody, Rex? And then we drop them into the science fiction film that they're like, what? I think that can be some of it for sure. It says even if they've read the material in press, it was just a little too distant, both in concept and I think in the way that characters were drawn, that they were portrayed. It was much more of a science fiction. And yeah, I get that. Like I said, it's not necessarily untrue. That part is untrue, but he's not acknowledging the elephant in the room. He says, and Angus, to his credit, took it very seriously and genuinely, and wanted to represent those characters as real characters. But the characters in Toy Story are much broader, and so I think that there was a disconnect between what people wanted and expected and what we were giving to them. Well, yeah, that's exactly certainly what it is. So let me say this. I want to be fair to Pete Docter. He's not necessarily saying anything that's untrue. I think that's part of it. It's not just this quote unquote woke stuff. Is that you gave the audience something that it was that they did not want, but you're almost blaming the audience in this case, where it's like, well, you had a baked in audience and they have an expectation, be it these people that grew up on Toy Story themselves, now have children and all of that, and you're just giving them something that maybe is not what it is that they were expecting and what it is that they wanted. But also, your marketing certainly didn't help you either. We know that, they cared so much about this whole kiss that was in this gay kiss and all that. That's part of it as well, right? It's always a combination of different things. And I think our enemies often like to think that we just zero in on one thing, as if the woke stuff is the only thing that's there. And that's like a symptom, right? It's like it all boils down to the fact that you're not giving audiences what it is that they want, and you fail. And oftentimes, like, not going to say he just admitted that, but it's like, they think of themselves almost smarter than the audience, and you have to live up to the expectation of the audience, or that used to be what used to have to happen, right? It's like it's a market. Audience wants something, you give them audience, you give it that. Now it's like, well, you must be more sophisticated, or you must live up to the standards that we're putting out. Like, are you good enough to support our work? Is how a lot of Hollywood thinks, and that's why they're failing now, because that big disconnect is there, and there's more conversation happening now more than it ever has in like this space whether it be entertainment space where people are throwing out their ideas, linking up with other people. You see all these panels. It's more connected than it's ever been. So people are able to cipher through this without having to have you just feed them information and people just kind of decipher it as individuals, which they're still having to do. It's just the conversation is more open. And people are seeing through the gimmick that is Hollywood, because, again, this stuff isn't just buried in a, like, let's say the Wrap was a magazine. You used to have to be subscribed to that magazine to even hear this guy say that. Now other people cover the coverage and it's just out there. Now everybody knows. There's a disconnect. Still operating on an old archaic model that has proven to not work in this day and age. Wherever you're viewing the content, I appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, you may be interested in my comic book company, Rippaverse Comics. Our first book and campaign, ISOM #1, brought in $3.7 million with tens of thousands of satisfied customers. Visit Rippaverse.com to check out our store and stay up to date with the latest campaigns from one of the hottest new comic book companies. Also, my first big step towards a parallel economy was the development of my personal website, EricDJuly.com. This entirely replaced my Patreon. Now, if you enjoy this content, please consider becoming a member over at the website. We have an ever-expanding list of perks for various membership tiers, a forum, and a phone app. Some of these perks will even benefit you if you're fans of the Rippaverse. Anyway, I appreciate you so much for being a supporter and or customer. I even got a little love for my haters.